Why hello there, and welcome back to insert sassy comment about the dragon game here. In my last video, I took a look at the revised species and all of the miscellaneous stuff from the third One D&D Dungeon & Dragon playtest packet, and now I'm going to look at the Cleric, which is the only thing I didn't look at in that video. Now, the last playtest packet had all three of the classes from the expert group, the Bard, Ranger, and Rogue, and I think a lot of people were assuming that that was how it was going to go moving forward, that each playtest packet was going to give us all the three classes from a different class group. But in this playtest packet, we got revised species and one class, which makes me wonder if there was something of a shakeup after the negative reaction to the first two honestly kind of terrible playtest packets. And then perhaps some of the stuff they were working on and thought they had ready to go, having to go back for future revisions based on that feedback. And yes, I'm going into this with a very negative mindset, I realize that, but, you know, on the upside, that means the bar is really low, so they just have to do okay to impress me. So now let's get into the One Dungeon & Dragon Cleric. And if you have not seen my previous videos where I went over the playtest classes, I will be going through the class level by level and highlighting all of the changes that have been made from the standard 5th edition Cleric. So first up, the Cleric's hit dice, saves, skills, weapon, armor, and tool proficiencies remain unchanged, as does largely their spellcasting. The main difference being that now instead of the Cleric spell list, they get their spells from the Divine spell list, which I assume is really similar to the Cleric spell list, but I am not going to contrast two complete spell lists. Also, instead of preparing a number of spells per day equal to your Wisdom modifier plus level, it is a number of spells equal to your spell slots. So assuming a Wisdom of 16, which is a +3 modifier, you get fewer prepared spells at levels 1 and 2, the same number at 3 and 4, and then more from level 5 onward, although it is now more restrictive in terms of which levels of spells you can prepare. Also, this includes cantrips, so now you prepare the cantrips like any other spell instead of just learning them. Channel Divinity has been moved from level 2 to 1 and is now usable a number of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus instead of once per short rest with additional uses as you level up. And as is usually the case, I prefer the encounter power version to the usable number of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus version. It just allows for the thing to be used, like once per encounter, but then only once per encounter. It is a good way for limiting the uses of an ability. Turn Undead has been slightly tweaked. Now affected creatures are dazed, but that is basically what they were before, and they are still restricted to only being able to take the dash action. The big difference being that instead of the target must use its action to move away from you, it is if they move, they cannot move closer to you. And this is a thing that, as a player, it seems a bit less exciting not having all of the undead just flee from you, but as a DM, it seems way more convenient if this is used during tactical combat, because you then do not have to move every undead that gets affected every round away from the undead turning cleric. And they have added a new use for Channel Divinity, Divine Spark, which allows you to either heal or harm a creature for a number of d8 equal to your proficiency bonus. And I do like this. I like the cleric getting healing abilities that are not their spells, because when you play a cleric, you feel kind of obligated to heal, so the more healing you get that is not from your spells, the more of your spells you can comfortably spend on, literally anything else. At level 2, you get Holy Order, which gives you an option of 3 Sacred Rolls, Protector, which grants proficiency in martial weapons and heavy armor, Scholar, which gives you proficiency in 2 skills, which you then also get to add a bonus equal to your Wisdom modifier to checks using, and Thaumaturge, which lets you prepare 1 additional level 0 spell per day, and also regain an expended use of Channel Divinity on a short rest. So yes, the thing that I wanted is still an option, but I would still like it to be the default. And you might be thinking, hey, that kind of sounds like they unloaded some of the features from the Cleric domains into their own thing. And yeah, basically, that's more or less what it is. Also, you do get a second one of these at level 9, so I kind of hope that we get more of them, because getting to choose 2 of 3 things is never, like, incredibly interesting. The Cleric Subclass, previously Divine Domains, has been moved from level 1 to 3, and the only subclass presented in the playtest packet is the Life Domain, so we are going to look at the Life Domain. The domain spells work the same, just bonus prepared spells, although the specific spells chosen have been changed, and of course, you don't get any for first level because you don't have the subclass at first level, and that is something of an issue. Even if they wanted to change the level of everything else, they could still give you the subclass at level 1 and just let you have those level 1 domain spells, because the big thing is, your domain is tied to your deity, and those are like the most important parts of a cleric. And since it is such an important part of the character, it makes sense to select it at first level, since surprisingly they have yet to retheme the cleric to no longer require an association with the deity, which would fit very well with the overall no lore, only mechanics style that they've been going with so far for this revision. Anyway, also moved from level 1 to 3 is Disciple of Life, which increases the healing from healing spells by 2 plus the spell level, although it has been changed to specify spells you cast with a spell slot versus spells of first level or higher. And that might just be a language thing that doesn't mean anything, or it could reference something. Preserve Life has moved from level 3 to 6 and remains the same, allowing you to expend a use of Channel Divinity to channel a number of points of healing equal to 5 times your cleric level, divided between any number of creatures within 30 feet, up to a maximum of half of their total hit points. Although the language specifying that it cannot be used on constructs or undead has been removed, but for now, I'm not going to assume that means you can use it on undead or constructs, just that the language has been slightly changed or altered or moved somewhere else. Blessed Healer has moved from level 6 to 10 and still functions the same, basically allowing you to gain the benefits of Disciple of Life on yourself, getting that extra 2 plus spell level healing whenever you cast a healing spell on someone else. Divine Strike is straight up gone, or is it? And Supreme Healing has moved from level 17 to 14, but otherwise functions the same, maximizing the dice from all of your healing spells. So overall, not much changed here. A few things were removed, but more so they just kind of went somewhere else. The only real change being most things moved to a higher level, except for the one thing that was moved to a lower level, and a bunch of changes to the language used, which may or may not actually affect use. The only real big thing is the loss of those level 1 domain spells, but more importantly, the thematic association of choosing your domain at level 1. And this is one of those things, maybe it's for balance, maybe it's for consistency, but moving all these abilities up 2 or 4 levels does, make them less useful because less players are going to get access to them, and then when you get access to them, it is going to be at a higher level when their function is not as impressive. Anyway, back to the main cleric. At levels 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19, you get a feat in place of the ability score improvement, and of course you can just take the ability score improvement feat if you still want the ability score improvement. At level 5, Smite Undead replaces Destroy Undead and deals a number of d8 radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus to any undead who fail their save against your turn undead. And I kind of feel like this version is objectively better, but also Destroy Undead is really cool and also connects all the way back to the original White Box Cleric. However, it is really restrictive in terms of the undead that it functions on. Like, how many CR2 undead creatures are you really encountering at level 11. So I will reluctantly say that this is an improvement based on the fact that it actually works on creatures that are still a threat at your current level. At 7th level, you get Blessed Strikes, which adds an extra d8 radiant damage to your weapon attacks or 0-level spells. So basically, Divine Strike plus Spontaneous Spellcasting, although it does not go up to 2d8 at level 14. And this is one that I really like. Clerics are definitely one of, if not the best, caster/fighter character classes. So I like the idea of an ability that gives you a buff to both weapon and spell combat. Also, it negates the need for each domain to kind of have to decide if it is for smashy clerics or blasty clerics. You can now be a smashy cleric and a blasty cleric in any domain. And if they really want to maintain some of that theming, it wouldn't be hard for them to throw in, one little ability that says, oh, when you use Divine Strike, you can choose to deal thunder damage instead of radiant, and then it's just like the version that was there before. Divine Intervention has been moved from level 10 to 11, but otherwise is the same, allowing you to roll percentile, and then if you roll under your cleric level, have your deity intervene on your behalf, which is a cool ability, I think. And they have changed the cooldown on that from 7 days to 2d6 days, and at level 18, you get to just have it happen without having to roll, which you normally got at level 20, and also the cooldown goes down to 2d4 days. And then, of course, they vacated that from level 20 because, like all of the other playtest classes, you now get the Epic Boon at level 20, which is a super duper fancy level 20 feat. The one that is recommended for the Cleric being the Epic Boon of Fate, which allows you to add a d10 bonus or penalty to any creature's d20 test within 60 feet once per short rest. And just for some further examples of the Epic Boons, because there are only 3 in this packet and I can list them all, there is the Epic Boon of Spell Recall, which allows you to cast a spell of level 5 or lower without expending a spell slot, and the Epic Boon of True Sight, which gives you True Sight. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, I do not like the Epic Boons. For one thing, they are incredibly unbalanced. Like, an extra use of a level 5 or lower spell per day versus permanent, always-on True Sight. But the big issue is, it doesn't matter if they are balanced or useful because they are a whole category of thing that will only ever be used by less than 1% of players. Making them, for the most part, like hypothetical content. They are a thing that you will look at and say, oh wow, that would be a cool thing to get at level 20, but then you don't get to level 20. And honestly, they're not that cool. They are kind of generic because they are designed to be applicable to multiple different classes because they are feats, and that's how feats work. Personally, I would much rather have a very specific and very cool 20th level ability from my class than just a feat. Which, would also be used by less than 1% of players, but would be less in the way because they'd be tucked away at the end of the class section instead of wherever they're going to put the Epic Boons. In the last playtest packet, they were just listed with the other feats, so they were just kind of in the way. And that was the One Dungeon & Dragon Cleric, and overall, they moved stuff around. Like, maybe moving the stuff to later levels was a balance issue. I just have kind of a hard time saying, I think getting these abilities at later levels is a good thing, because getting abilities is fun. Smite Undead is a probably more useful but significantly less spectacular replacement for Destroy Undead. Pulling the Holy Order features and the Blessed Strikes out of the domains is a change that I overall really like. The Holy Orders give you a bit more flexibility with your character. Like, if I want to be a Knowledge Cleric, but I also want heavy armor and martial weapon proficiencies, I can do that now. But it does of course mean the loss of those level 1 abilities if the level 1 abilities are not rolled into other options for the Holy Order. And Blessed Strike is more useful. You can use it on attacks or on spells, and you get it one level earlier. You just don't get an extra d8 at level 14. But it also becomes a thing that only has to be listed once in the main Cleric entry instead of in every single domain, and then, as I said, they also don't have to pick if a domain is a smashy domain or a blasty domain. Those are the technical terms for referring to a weapon-based character versus a magic-using character. So that is my big thing that I do like, those two features, and the big thing that I do not like is the subclass being moved from level 1 to 3, specifically the loss of the level 1 domain spells, and just getting your domain at level 1, because as I keep saying, I think it is an important thematic element for the Cleric. Like, yeah, at level 1 you can be a Cleric of Pelor, and you can plan to take the life domain at level 3, but then for 2 levels you just gain no benefit for this very important core character choice that you have made. And for my weird little nitpick of this video, the magic action. Using Channel Divinity is specified as being a magic action, and then we go and look up magic action, and it is just casting a spell or using a magic item that uses a standard action. So, a magic action is a standard action. And unless they are planning to have some kind of abilities that allow you to use a magic action as a bonus action or a reaction, it's kind of pointless to define this thing where it's just, this ability uses a magic action is a standard action, therefore this ability uses a standard action. Oh, and if you started playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, standard action is what they used to call what is now known as just an action. Because that does make it quite a bit more clear that you are specifically referring to the mechanic concept of an action instead of the general concept of an action. So overall, like the rogue from the previous playtest, it does actually feel like the slight revision that they were saying the not new edition was going to be. Like, they made some changes I liked, they made some changes I didn't like, but overall, it actually felt like all of the changes were made for a reason. Taking Holy Order and Blessed Strike out of the domains makes the domains simpler and also less restrictive. Smite Undead takes the concept of Destroy Undead, but makes it more useful when fighting higher level enemies. And the changes in the levels for the domain features, they're probably just trying to standardize those as being at levels 3, 6, 10, and 14. I know I was trying to give them the benefit of a doubt and say that maybe it was a balance issue, but this is probably much more likely. So, as I said in my other video on this playtest, overall, the quality in the playtest materials is getting better. Like, I am kind of starting to wonder if the really inconsistent quality in the last playtest was some kind of intentional, you know what, fine, let's just put everything in and see which one gets the best response move on their part. Because the Cleric revision is significantly closer to the Rogue revision than it is to the Bard or Ranger. But you know me, I'm just filled with suspicion about the behind-the-scenes machinations going on over at the Wizard House. That's what I call Wizards of the Coast now, the Wizard House. And I believe that is all I have to say on the One D&D Dungeon & Dragon Cleric. It's kind of okay. It's not significantly better, it's not significantly worse, it's just a little bit different, and maybe that's actually the best outcome for a revision. If you did not see my previous video, I went over the revised player species and the Goliath, which was not revised because it was not in any of the previous playtest packets, as well as the entire changelog. So if you want to watch that, I will put a link to that wherever it is the links go, and I will be back the next time a playtest packet comes out looking at more One D&D playtest materials. I mean, like, I'll be putting out a lot of other videos between now and then, lots of quality videos that you might also enjoy. And thank you for watching, with extra special thanks to my Fightin' Flail Snails, Samuel Gorski, Ranty Mulholland, and Toshirokuro. If you'd like to be cool like them, you can check out my Patreon, where you can get early access to videos and fun stuff that I make for the Patreon. But if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, these other videos which either myself or the Cold Heartless YouTube algorithm have lovingly selected for you, which I'm sure are lovely videos that you will also enjoy. And I will see you next time.